Hello, World History 1 students. This is Mr. Everton, and this is a video all about Alexander the Great. Today we're going to talk about why Alexander is referred to as Alexander the Great, and you should be able to answer that question at the end of the video. So this is a picture of Alexander's dad, Philip II of Macedon, and we talked about him in the previous video on the Peloponnesian War. Remember that in the Peloponnesian War, the Athenians and the Spartans, the two most powerful city-states in Greece, fought each other in a very costly war and severely weakened each other. And that when they did that, they left the door open for the king of Macedon, Philip II, to come in and attack and take over all of Greece, which is what he did. And he unified Greece for the first time under one government, his kingdom. And then shortly thereafter, I jumped the gun. Here you can see a map of the Balkan and Peloponnesian peninsulas. You can see Macedon is to the north, and that by fighting a series of battles, Macedon was able to unify all of Greece under Philip II. But then Philip was assassinated. He went to a wedding and got killed by his own bodyguards, which seems to happen a lot in world history. Kings getting murdered by their own bodyguards. It's a terrible way to go. So his son, Alexander III of Macedon, killed the people responsible and then became king of Macedon and Greece himself. And this is a mosaic illustration of Alexander the Great. And Alexander was very young when he became the king of Macedon and Greece, but he'd been educated by the Greek philosopher Aristotle, who you can see here lecturing him. Apparently, Alexander did not do very well on his thesis statement. Sorry, Alexander. So Alexander then turned his attention to this empire, which you should remember from the beginning of this unit. Does anybody know what this is a map of? Gary, the honor student, does. Hello, Gary. What is it? Yes, you can tell that they have a royal road, and it is the shape of the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire, which for so long had been a thorn in the side of the Greek city-states, had fought the Persian Wars with them, and then had continued to be a threat throughout this time period. Alexander decided he was going to conquer the Persian Empire, and that is what he did. This is a mosaic illustrating the Battle of Gaugamela, fought between Alexander and the Persian Emperor Darius III. Here's Alexander, and here's Darius III. And Darius was actually killed shortly after this battle, and it was the decisive battle for Alexander in his conquest of the Persian Empire. Here's a map of the route that Alexander took, the many battles that he fought throughout the Persian Empire, taking over Egypt, taking over all of the Persian Empire, and extending his domain all the way to the Indus River Valley in the east. This is a very large empire, and it is incredibly impressive that Alexander was able to conquer such a large empire in such a short period of time. He was a military genius who basically never lost a battle, and frequently won battles that he had no business winning through incredibly clever strategy and tactics. However, after Alexander conquered the Persians and established this very impressive empire that extended from Egypt to the borders of India, he died at age 32. We're not entirely sure why he died. It might have been some sort of illness. We think that it was some sort of illness. There's rumors that he was poisoned. When he died at age 32, he didn't leave behind any structure to run his empire, and his empire immediately fell apart. And so the large unified empire that Alexander had created became small little kingdoms that were run by different advisors to Alexander, different generals that he had. And so Egypt became run by the Ptolemies, and Persia became run by the Seleucids, and a variety of other small Hellenistic kingdoms sprung up in what we now refer to as the Hellenistic Age. By the way, as Alexander moved across this map. I keep showing you different versions of this map in this video, but here you can see in this version of the map that there are a lot of cities that Alexander built, and it's not a coincidence that he named them all after himself. They're all named Alexandria, except for this one, Bucephalus, which is named after his horse. Good job, Alexander. This is the most famous Alexandria, which is located in Egypt. You can see it here. These are all Greek-style cities. They're all modeled on Greek-style cities with an acropolis, an agora, and temples and marketplaces. And Greek-style architecture was present in these cities, and they used Greek-style government. So as Alexander conquered the Persian Empire and built these cities, or had his people start to build them, he was spreading Greek culture. This is the Library of Alexandria in Egypt, which is a very famous library that was lost. It was burned down eventually, but during its day contained all of this, the achievements of Greek civilization, all of the philosophy and plays and books on mathematics that were written during the Greek Golden Age were all housed in the Library of Alexandria. And so Hellenistic culture is the major achievement of Alexander the Great, which he didn't necessarily try to create, but he did. Just by conquering, just by being a Greek person who took over Persia, he merged two things. He took Greek culture and Asian culture, and he stirred them together. He's like a bloody whisk, and in the mixing bowl of Asia. That's not my metaphor, but I co-opted it. Sorry, Andrew Marr. He connected Central Asia to the Mediterranean in a way that it hadn't been before. And he built Greek-style cities throughout Asia, which I was alluding to just a moment ago when that map was up. And he helped to increase trade between the Mediterranean and between Central Asia. This was in the early days of the Silk Road, and so this helped to establish the Silk Road, helped to build the connections between the Mediterranean and Central Asia. Because of Alexander, the Greek language was used throughout the Hellenistic world. It was used throughout the old Persian Empire. All the people who lived there, all the learned people who lived there, started to read and learn Greek. It introduced Persian-style monarchy to the Mediterranean. So Greek people, and later Roman people, this would be very important, learned about Persian ideas about how to run government. They started to set up bureaucracies like the Persian bureaucracy and breaking up empires into provinces and using different government officials to run government more effectively. And because of Alexander, Greek politics, art, and science were all introduced to Asia. And you end up with people getting access to the ideas of democracy and the kinds of architecture that the Greeks were creating and the kinds of sculpture that they were doing. You see sculptures in India of the Buddha that look like Greek sculpture. So Alexander, I'm really happy that you came to this realization. Looking back on it, I'm glad Aristotle was so hard on me. Education allowed me to become a super famous general, spread Greek culture, and name a city after my horse. Stay in school, kids. All right. So to summarize, today we talked about Macedon, which is a small kingdom to the north of Greece, which eventually conquered all of Greece under Philip II, who then died, leaving the kingdom to Alexander. And Alexander the Great became Alexander the Great by conquering the Persian Empire, which then, when he died, splintered, broke up into many small pieces. And this is what we call the Hellenistic Age, where Greek culture was spread to Asia and created something new. Thanks very much for watching, and I will talk to you next time.